Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. We are back once again to continue our WrestleMania project, this time working on WrestleMania 13, which took place on March 31st, 1996, in Rosemont, Illinois, at the Rosemont Horizon. This is the same venue that hosted the second portion of WrestleMania 2, that really weird, drawn out WrestleMania that had three locations. This was the second portion of that one. But yeah, coming off of WrestleMania 12, which in my opinion was the worst crowd we've seen so far through the WrestleMania series leading up to 12, I thought this was one of the best. So probably no surprise, as this is a Chicago suburb, so typically known for better crowds. So with that, the attendance announced for this WrestleMania was 18,197. So we'll get once again about on par for what we expected during that time period. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into each and every match, and we will review them as they happened, and then we will go over an overall rating and let you know what we thought of WrestleMania 13. The opening match features the Headbangers going up against the Godwins with Hillbilly Jim, and going up also against the new Blackjacks and Doug Furnas and Phil LaFon. This is the number one contenders match for those tag team titles, which commentary team hit on pretty hard that during this match that they would face the winner of the tag team championship match set to take place later on that night. So very much making it a big deal that we weren't even sure who they would face. So with that, KP, what did you make of this opening tag match of WrestleMania 13?
Normally, I would like to get things started on a positive note, but this one was just okay. It was bang average. It was, a kind of match that just felt a little bit chaotic to begin with, and then just sort of started to like stagnate and get a little decent towards the late stages when it was down to just two teams. So this is an elimination rules match, and basically how the match sort of goes out is it is kind of chaotic to begin with. There's like a big brawl, and it's a little bit here, there, and everywhere to begin with, and then it gets to a point where there are some teams on the outside of the ring, and two of those teams get ejected, they get eliminated, they get disqualified. I really don't exactly know why this happened. I tried watching it back and I still couldn't make make sense of it all. And even the commentary team seemed to be confused at the decision. They said, "Oh, I think they've been disqualified," and that was basically all that was said. So in terms of what actually happened there, I don't really know. But essentially, what does take place is the new Blackjacks and Doug and LaFon. They're the two teams that get DQ'd on the outside. Then that leaves the Headbangers and the Godwins as the two remaining teams. And once like all the previous sort of carnage has taken place and it starts to calm down a little bit, the two remaining teams actually do have a somewhat decent tag match between them. I thought it was actually all right, to be fair, from that point. But yeah, I don't know. I think just that little bit of chaos and the confusion with the DQ and essentially turning a fatal four-way into just a regular tag team match. I don't know. It seemed to be a little bit strange to me. It didn't really hit me where I wanted it to be hit. In the end, the Headbangers do get the victory. It gets to a point where Mosh hits a diving seated senton, and that's enough to pick up the victory for the Headbangers. But yeah, I mean, I don't really have too much to say about it. It was just okay. It was fine. It didn't really do anything for me. And yeah, it just, like I said, that sort of like, it's a tale of two halves. That really weird, chaotic first half, and then just transitioning into what was a pretty standard tag match for the second half. Yeah, I don't know. It's just a bit of an odd feeling for sure. I gave it a 5 out of 10. Just a standard in the middle type, across the board type matchup. Yeah, I don't know. I wish I could say a lot more about it, but unfortunately, it just didn't really work for me personally. What about you, Nick? Did you like this one a bit more than I did? I feel like this is a tough one to really get started here. It's a bit of a weird vibe.
Yeah, that's about how I received it as well. I think a lot of the tag teams here were just didn't really care about them, and they didn't really give you the time to care about them if you wanted to. So that's kind of what I walked away here. Even the Headbangers, which were probably the most interesting tag team. Obviously, it was interesting seeing Bradshaw as one of the new Blackjacks, but those first two teams left pretty quickly. So really, like I said, didn't really have much time to get invested with them if you hadn't known about them before. Which out of these four. No, I think the only team I knew about was the Headbangers, and that was a very small knowledge for me as well. So I was surprised that they were getting the win. I thought the Godwins with Hillbilly Jim reminded me, a lot of the team that Hillbilly Jim had been a part of not that long ago at WrestleMania. So I kind of thought that would be the team. But yeah, Headbangers, very interesting attire, very interesting team to get the win here. And I've rated about what you did. I gave it a 5.5. I think they probably would have been better served either let this, let the match go longer with all four teams, or just use those final two teams to let that have a longer match. I think that probably would have been the best course of action here. But yeah, definitely not the best opening match for the WrestleMania that we've seen so far. But with that, we will quickly move on to the next match that took place, which has Rocky Maivia, Dwayne The Rock Johnson's debut at WrestleMania, going up against the Sultan for the Intercontinental Championship. Obviously, the Sultan is accompanied by Bob Backlund and the Iron Sheik. KB, what'd you make of The Rock's debut WrestleMania match?
Not bad, to be fair. I thought this one was a pretty decent contest. It did a lot of good for both men. I thought when I was watching it, I thought that Sultan looked particularly strong throughout the contest. I think he did a great job of what he was meant to be doing out there. And Rocky showed a lot of resiliency. So I think it was a classic sort of like babyface heel type matchup here with this one, and it just sort of worked. It was quite simple but effective. Yeah, just generally speaking, the match flowed really nicely, and I had a good time watching it. Rocky survives a lot of late punishment in form of a thrust kick, a power driver, and then he eventually rolls up the Sultan to get the victory in the end. So sort of like a just a win by any means necessary type victory here for Rocky Maivia in his WrestleMania debut. But yeah, Sultan and the Sheik, who is at ringside here, supporting Sultan for the entire contest, they attack Rocky post match. And that sort of provokes Rocky Johnson to arrive, the father of Rocky Maivia. And yeah, he comes down sort of like help out Rocky, but they get he gets outnumbered. Then Maivia eventually gets back up to his feet. He gets back into the action. He brings the fight to both men, and then he helps Johnson out, clearing the ring of both Sheik and Sultan. So the two celebrate at the end of the matchup. Obviously, quite a personal moment for those two, father and son. The son's first WrestleMania appearance being a victory, still holding on to that Intercontinental Championship come the end of this contest as well. But yeah, I thought this was a decent one-on-one match. I liked it. I think it did everything right. It wasn't anything special by any means necessary. There wasn't anything like incredibly good about it, but it just was a simple one-on-one match that had the basic foundation that just tends to work, and it's a one-on-one blueprint sort of thing. So yeah, I gave it a 6 out of 10. I just liked the flow, and I thought it did everything it needed to do. So what did you make of this one, Nick?
Yeah, it was a decent match. It wasn't anything special, but it wasn't anything terrible either. They got enough time. Obviously, Iron Sheik and Bob Backlund did their part to try to help the Sultan win here, but it was all for naught. You got a roll up pen, which not ideal either. But like I said, both guys got enough time here where they looked decent enough, and of course, it was a great moment to have Rocky Maivia's dad, Rocky Johnson, come in and help him. So that was a nice moment as well to kind of fend off the onslaught of the bad guys. But yeah, decent enough, which I feel like is probably a phrase we'll use a bit during this WrestleMania. But I gave this one a 6 out of 10. It was good for what it was, but it definitely isn't an all-time classic by any means. Getting into the next match we have, in my opinion, which was the best match of the night so far, and that was Hunter Hearst Helmsley with China going up against Goldust with Marlena. Um, yeah, this is Goldust's, I believe, second appearance WrestleMania. But both of these guys, I feel like this kind of WrestleMania, and as we continue to turn the page from the old, we see a lot of these guys that were prime players in the Attitude Era, and this is about when I started watching. I wasn't able to watch the PLEs, but I was able to watch the weekly shows. And so, right about this time, shortly after, is when I start seeing these guys on a weekly basis, and so these are the nostalgia ones that hit the hardest for me about this time. A lot of these guys start coming into play, but yeah, KP for the match itself. What'd you think of this one?
Well, firstly, it's going to be a little bit of a while before we get into my nostalgia, that's for sure. I was a bit of a late bloomer going into the wrestling business. But in terms of this particular matchup here, Hunter against Goldust, yeah, I thought it was decent. It was, I don't want to sound too repetitive, but it was an okay match. You know, it was all right. It wasn't anything special, and it had a good back and forth. I thought the match flowed really nicely. I thought these two complemented each other pretty well. You know, just tend to just put on a decent matchup between each other. And yeah, I enjoyed how it flowed. Like I said in the previous match, quite similar description to really what I gave Rocky Maivia and the Sultan. But yeah, this one had a little bit extra in it with obviously you know, the two ladies on the outside, Marlena and China. Goldust, he sets up Hunter looking to get the victory, but he lets go of Hunter and instead, you know, focuses on Marlena, picking her up and putting her onto the apron, sort of like protecting her from China. Hunter knees Goldust in the back, which sends him into Marlena. That crashes Marlena into the clutches of China at ringside. China sort of like ragdolling Marlena about in like a bear hug type maneuver, and then Hunter hits a pedigree on Goldust in order to get the victory in the end. But that's essentially how the match played out toward the late stages. But up until that point, yeah, it was really back and forth, and I thought it was just a nice flow. Goldust and Hunter, I think they just, you know, were able to have a little bit of fun out there. The match had a decent amount of time as well, which is good. So you could see a few things here and there. Just China's demonic almost stare, you know, very, very focused, lasered in from the outside. That was like as clear as day as the match was going along as well. Somewhat distracting, but you know, it was definitely a point that can be mentioned there. But yeah, I think that these two put on a decent contest with each other. I gave it a 6 out of 10, like the previous match. But yeah, I just think that there wasn't really anything stand out in this one, but it was a nice back and forth contest. I enjoyed it for what it was, and yeah, I don't really have anything bad to say about it. It's just, you know, I think there's a little like step up to when you get to those like higher ratings that you just need something a little bit more special in the matchup. But I like this one for what it was. I enjoyed it, and I thought it was decent enough. You know, just to get two more guys in action. But yeah, Nick, you said this was your match tonight so far. How high did you rate it?
Yeah, that I don't definitely far from the match of the night, but up until this point, yeah, it was, and I enjoyed. Like honestly, it was just one of those matches that it just felt like a nice, you know, a wrestling match. You know, both of the guys putting on a quality match, and obviously two very quality performers. Obviously, we know today that you know Triple H is one of the best heels of all time, and as a kid, I couldn't stand him. I hated him. By far, the most hated wrestler that I ever had was Triple H. But then as I got older, I realized, well, that's just because he's that good at it, you know, at his job. So, but yeah, Goldust obviously always around the comedy skits, but which is a shame because I always felt like he is a we kind of see that in today's current era, but he is a better wrestler than what he's portrayed a lot of times simply because he was always surrounded by those comedic gimmicks. But yeah, both men certainly capable of putting on a good match, and this was just that. Obviously, the ending coming with China manhandling Marlena there at the end, distracting Goldust, rightfully so, and so you know basically one-on-one wrestling, and then Triple H lands that pedigree, and luckily it was not ruined finisher thanks to Ultimate Warrior at WrestleMania 12. But yeah, this was a decent match. I gave it a 7 out of 10. Just quality contest with some quality wrestling. Getting into the next match, we have Owen Hart and the British Bulldog defending their World Tag Team Championship up against Mankind, making his debut, who was already in need of back surgery for this match, before this match, and luckily found another solution to kind of push that off. And a returning Vader, this time with Paul Bearer, as they briefly mentioned it, at least during the actual matches, and that was that Paul Bearer had left, no longer by Undertaker's side. So now he's found someone similarly as weird, and maybe we guess we could say different as that of Mankind. So, KP, what'd you make of this tag team championship match?
This one was a difficult one. This one was tough. So it was an okay match. It started off really well, I thought. The first half was quite enjoyable, and I had a great time watching it. Then it got to a point where it just sort of like really slowed down. The pace just completely disappeared, and it just started to drag. It went on for too long in the end, in my opinion. I got to a point where I just wasn't enjoying it anymore, and I was just sort of like getting bored by it. And the finish was extremely anticlimactic as well. So yeah, a tale of two halves. Unfortunately, was good to start with and bad towards the end. I think if anything, you probably want the other way around so that you can sort of like go through the bad to get to the good. But to go through the good to get to the bad, not exactly worth the time spent, in my opinion. Yeah, I talked about an anticlimactic finish, very much so. The match actually ends in a double countout. So Mankind, he locks in the mandible claw on British Bulldog in the ring. Vader sort of bumps Owen into the both of them, and that causes all three men to crash to ringside. The referee then counts out both of the legal men, whilst Mankind has the mandible claw on British Bulldog on the outside, and then that just that there's the call for the double count out then. So yeah, I don't know. I just think regarding the finish, it was pretty lackluster and just didn't do anything for me in that respect. But it's really a big shame because the match started off quite well. It was you could see there was there was a lot of animosity between both teams at the start, and it was well paced. Owen Hart, I think he had a great few minutes towards the beginning. British Bulldog looked really strong and impressive. Vader, just his general size and power, I thought he brought a lot to it as well. And then Mankind a little bit here and there, I think he was helping out too. But yeah, it just really just slowed down and just got so drab as the match went on that it just felt like it went on for way too long, unfortunately speaking. But there were some decent tag team bits throughout the matchup, and there was some hot tags and stuff. But just because it went too long, I felt like they sort of like faded away into almost nothing. So yeah, a bit of a lost opportunity here, I think, a bit of a missed opportunity for sure. And yeah, I don't know, I felt this was a little below par in terms of what I thought it could have been, especially at those early stages. I gave it a 5.5 out of 10. Don't want to be too critical on it, but I just think that, yeah, if the match had been, kind of similar to that of the first half going into the second, it would have been a lot better. So, yeah, a bit disappointed by that. What did you make of this one, Nick? Was it hard for you as well, or did you think maybe actually, it was a bit better than I'm making it out to be?
Probably come as no surprise to the listeners, but I gave it the exact same rating. Um, as we tend to have similar opinions here, but yeah, considering the talent in the ring, I had pretty high expectations for this one, but and it was a decent enough match for what we got. But yeah, hard to rate a match super high when we get a finish like that. It was well played, and all that. But Mankind, I think, kind of just showing, I think at least the point of it was he didn't really care about the matches. He more so cared about inflicting punishment, and that mandible claw that the announce team was selling quite quite a bit. So, rightfully so, that is a move that does cause a lot of chaos over the years. And speaking of the announced team, this announced team featuring Vince, JR, and Jerry the King Lawler, which was minus less Vince McMahon. For some reason, he's still on announcing team, and I don't think he's that great. But Jerry the King Lawler and JR are the two kind of announcers that I grew up, with. So it was cool to see them, and so kind of announcing that Mandible Claw was this destructive move and devastating move. Just kind of hit me in the feels there. But yeah, British Bulldog, Owen Hart felt like this should have been a better match. Vader obviously a very consistent performer, but just couldn't look past that kind of finish. So yeah, 5.5 out of 10 for me. And this was kind of just the feel for the night. Nothing crazy, nothing special, but that is a great segue into the next match, which is by far the match of the night. I'm sure you will agree with that, KP. This has Bret the Hitman Hart going up against Stone Cold Steve Austin, with Ken Shamrock as the special guest referee in a submissions match. A fun bit about this one. This is the Bret the Hitman's Hart. Technically, it's not his last, but up until this point, it was his last, kind of ending his WrestleMania run, which was 13 in a row, which would not be that record would not be broken until obviously the Undertaker would eventually go on to do his 13th. Triple H almost got to that 13 as well, but a torn quadricep the January before prevented that from happening. So as of now, Bret Hart is the WrestleMania champ here, breaking the previous record, which was obviously Hulk Hogan at 9. So with that in mind, KP, give us your thoughts on this iconic match.
So first and foremost, there's a reason why this match is spoken so highly of, and it's just regarded as one of the greatest matches of all time. And it's just absolutely fantastic in every sort of sense that you can imagine. It's one of my favorite matches ever. And yeah, just watching this back again, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure, an absolute pleasure. It always is. So yeah, seeing this is just it always puts a smile on my face, and I absolutely love just the way it all just takes place. You got your sort of like chaotic, sort of like intense brawl towards the beginning of the matchup, leads into the stands, and goes up into the crowd, and it eventually goes back into the ring. And then you've got that sort of like progressive, wearing down process between Bret Hart and Stone Cold Steve Austin, which just sort of generally just weakens both men down toward the late stages, and then that results in a little bit of a hectic moment where Stone Cold gets busted open, and then that just sets the scene for the rest of the contest. Once Stone Cold gets busted open, this match goes from something that's really good to something that's absolutely exceptional. And it sounds quite simple because it's just a bit of blood. But the blood makes for so many iconic spots and, pictures, imagery during the match. I think it just really adds to what this match was meant to do. And it just made it exactly what it should be. The blood, going completely everywhere, all over Austin. It's all over the ring. It's an absolute bloody mess, towards the end of it. And it just looks like two guys have had a full on fight. And at the end of the day, there are moments in this match where it was a fight more than a wrestling match, and it was a strange way of sort of like being able to gel both a really nice wrestling contest into a fight and just quickly switching things up back and forth every now and then, because you got the submission side of things, which obviously that's what the match stipulation is. And that means that you do have to work down your opponent. You have to sort of weaken the limbs. You have to sort of like put more strain on your opponent. And you can do that with a fight, but I think there are elements of that you need to do in the wrestling side of things too. And that's what both of these men did to each other. You had Stone Cold locking in, Boston Crabs on Bret Hart. You had the sharpshooter in for such a long time towards the end. You had the fight leading up towards that, wrestling moves here and there, spilling towards the outside, all of this kind of stuff. And it all just works. Like, it just gels very nicely. It doesn't seem to at any point whether the match is dragging, that that it's boring in my opinion. I thought that it was just, it was great from start to finish, really. And yeah, there was never a dull moment, really, as far as I was concerned. Talking about the finish here. So Bret locks in the sharpshooter. After a pretty large amount of fight from Steve Austin, he does fade out in the end eventually, like to the hold. And that grants Bret Hart the victory. Post-match, we do get a little bit of Bret trying to sort of like, inflict further punishment upon Steve Austin. He goes to sort of like attack him, kicking him out or whatever. And then Ken Shamrock, the special guest referee, has had a pretty easy night up until this point. Hasn't really had an awful lot to do except for, asking Steve Austin if he wants to quit. And Steve Austin's basically just been, giving him middle fingers. Up until that point, it was pretty straightforward for him. So he gets involved here. He basically just stops Bret Hart from, just attacking Steve Austin any further. Bret eventually leaves the ring begrudgingly. And Austin gets back up to his feet. Once the ring has been cleared, there's a different official in there now, different referee. He tries to help Stone Cold up and like to give him some support. And Stone Cold just goes, you know what? Nope, I'm just gonna hit you with a stunner, and I'm gonna walk off by myself. Proper badass move. Didn't need any help from anybody. Just telling everybody that I can still walk. I'm still fine. Just leave me be. And I think, just generally speaking, that was a really nice part as well. There's an element of storytelling in this contest. I think it did everybody a lot of good. Bret Hart, known as this sort of like whiny persona at the moment, complaining about all these losses, to Shawn Michaels and everything like that in the build up to this one, and just everything to do with the WWF title. But this was a really nice sort of way to keep him out of that position and to keep him busy with just an absolutely tremendous contest. It was a brilliant fight. allowed both men to do whatever they felt was necessary throughout the matchup. Like I said, the blood added intensity. It made the closing stages absolutely iconic with the sharpshooter and, just the blood dripping from Stone Cold's face as he fades away. He doesn't give up. He just fades out. And yeah, again, just a badass way of ending it. This is my first match in the project that we've done so far that I've given a 10 out of 10. Like I said, this is one of my absolute all-time favorites, and I don't have enough time to really say exactly everything I want to say, but just to keep this short, it's incredible. If you haven't watched it, do. I highly recommend it. It's an all-timer. It really, really is. 10 out of 10 from me. It's just perfect, and it's a great, great match. Nick, how high do you rate this one? It is an all-timer, right? But how good is it for yourself?
So I can attest, if you haven't watched all of the videos in this series, that is KP's first 10. I thought we had him on a couple matches before, but it was not meant to be. But yes, I will agree. This is a 10 out of 10 match. If even if the match itself, you know, wasn't perfect. I feel like the story being told, the double cross, the scene at the end with Austin being put in the sharpshooter with the blood dripping down his face. It's just iconic scene when you think of pro wrestling. A lot of people, that is the scene one of the scenes they think of, and it's just one of those matches that will never, it will never go out of style. It's one of those matches that kind of stands the test of time. Just an absolute clinic by both guys, and this is, a lot of people view this match as the turning point for Austin's career. Without this match, maybe we don't get the beer drinking, badass that is Stone Cold. Bret certainly helped kind of catapult that character into existence, and this is the start of it. So the Attitude Era's biggest character, I think most would agree that it is Stone Cold Steve Austin, and without this match, maybe that's not the case. So just an absolute kind of point in wrestling history that without it, things could look very different. Um, the blade job was agreed upon by both guys, but was still not allowed in WWE, even though they did it, quite a bit. But during the match, Bret kind of, or excuse me, Austin hadn't really done that much, and so very shortly before the actual blade spot took place, Austin said to Bret, "I don't know, maybe we shouldn't do the blade spot." Obviously, that he ended up doing it anyways. I think Bret having a history of that sort of thing, and Vince usually getting after, unless you could pull it off as an accident. But apparently, it wasn't that big of a deal because Vince did put it on that VHS cover of WrestleMania 13. So apparently, he liked it, didn't have any issues with it. But yeah, for the actual match itself, just there's nothing I can say that you hadn't already. It is literally just the perfect match and one of the best, not only wrestling matches of all time, but WrestleMania matches of all time. It is one of the best actual wrestling matches of all time. So yeah, it is. It's one of those matches. If you've never seen a wrestling match, this is one that probably a lot of people would point you to. So yeah, definitely match of the night. Obviously, that goes without saying, but this was one of the highlights of the night. Getting into the next match, we have the returning Legion of Doom with Ahmed Johnson going up against the Nation of Domination in a Chicago street fight. This is the definition of chaos and kind of taking us back down a peg. Um, During the Attitude Era, we see the kind of hardcore division and title being born. Obviously, thanks in large part to ECW and what they were doing at the time. Um, but this becomes kind of standard, just chaos, weapons everywhere, everyone taking bumps everywhere. It was definitely an era that we don't see very often, at least in WWE. KP, what what did you make of this match? Even the cameras were having trouble like trying to figure out where they should be, and apparently a few spots that were supposed to be significant were missed. And Farouk, I feel like he's got to have the MVP here. Ended up being hospitalized after this match. Apparently, it took a bunch of bumps, and apparently, at the very least, had a separated shoulder. But it was rumored had cracked ribs as well. It felt like every time I saw Farouk, he was taking a bump of some kind. But yeah, KP, what'd you make of this one?
Well, I did not know anything about Farouk having those severe injuries post this match, but honestly, it's not surprising because yeah, I watched it as well, and thinking to myself, he's gone through a lot in this match. He's been tossed around, he's been destroyed. So yeah, I felt the same way. In terms of the match itself, how would I describe it? It was crazy and it was chaotic. It was fun, but it was a bit sloppy. So there's a few different elements to this one. I enjoyed it for a general matchup. I thought it was just a crazy contest, and it was great to see the Legion of Doom back as well. It's been too long since they were back around, or since they were involved. I thought they were absolutely top tier in the match that we've already seen them in. But yeah, in terms of this one, it was pure carnage from start to finish. Right, you couldn't keep your eyes off of it, and you didn't know where to look. There was so much going on all the time. Like you said, spots that were missed. I can completely understand that because every time the sort of camera panned to something else, something was already midway or is literally just about to happen. So yeah, I can definitely see that being the case. In the end, in this one, you do have the Legion of Doom and Ahmed Johnson getting the victory. They isolate Crush in the ring. After a Doomsday device and a 2x4 to the face, which is sort of like assisted by a couple of the guys, that's enough for LOD and Ahmed to get the win. So yeah, it's a whole lot led up to that point. It was it was absolutely crazy. We had all sorts of weapons, nightsticks, trash cans, just carnage by tables, 2x4s, just basically anything you can think of was involved here. It was. So it was a lot to take in, but there were a couple of moments I thought that were a little sloppy, and because there was so much to focus on, it was hard to really gauge what was going on all the time. And maybe that's just a production thing, and maybe they were trialing this out and want to get like a taste of it, see what they thought. Maybe it could have been. So but I think for a first effort, if that was the case, it was pretty good. Like I really liked it. So I gave it a 7 out of 10 in the end. I had a lot of fun watching it. But yeah, I think there were a few things here and there that maybe were a little bit, I don't know, just unfortunate that I would have liked to see be a little better. There's a little bit of a post-match thing with more members of the Nation of Domination being in the ring. They get hit with a in like a double sort of a doomsday device type situation, and yeah, LOD just looking extremely strong as they normally are. So yeah, great match. I thought Ahmed looked really really good as well. And yeah, just everyone just came out here, threw hands, threw weapons, beat each other up, and yeah, just left nothing in that ring. It was a fun, crazy contest, and that's exactly how I think it should be described.
Yeah, in this being a Chicago street fight, obviously we've seen, tons of those kind of reincarnated for whatever city they're currently in or close to. But this kind of set the precedent for that. Like I said, if you grew up in the Attitude Era, you definitely know these kind of matches are take place quite frequently. But this one definitely set the stage for that. Um, this is the kind of chaos you grew up loving from that hardcore division. Not quite to ECW levels, but this match, this match had a noose that was used several times around various wrestlers' necks. So it just felt like there were uh, no punches being held here for sure. And the commentary team hit quite often on everything but the kitchen sink being used, and that's pretty much accurate. There was literally everything. But yeah, let's be honest. While Legion of Doom and Ahmed Johnson won the match, did anyone actually win the match? I don't really think there are any actual winners here. But yeah, absolute chaos throughout the entirety. And yeah, it was entertaining, in a chaotic sort of way. I ended up giving this match a 6 out of 10. We then get into the main event, which has the Undertaker's sixth WrestleMania match going up against Psycho Sid for that WWE Championship. This would be Sid's final WrestleMania appearance and only his second one, but main eventing both of those bouts, which is a pretty impressive stat. The last time was that WrestleMania 8 bout with Hulk Hogan. So, with that, is there a reason why Psycho Sid only had to matches at WrestleMania, and whether even though they are main events. KP, what'd you think of this match and the sixth streak match of the Undertaker? How'd you rate this one?
Well, we mentioned in our WrestleMania 12 reactions about how that was the first, truly good Undertaker WrestleMania match in, up until that point. And I feel like we just went straight back to where we were, before that with this matchup right here. I was not a fan of this match, not at all. It starts off with, Undertaker and Sid, they're staring each other down in the ring. And then you just got Vince McMahon saying, Bret Hart's here. So Bret gets into the ring, and he gets a microphone. And I mentioned him being a little whiny earlier on, when we talk about him as Stone Cold, and the situation over the WWF Championship. And he basically just came out and did exactly that. So he called out Shawn Michaels, who's on commentary for this one, and he would say that his injury's fake, he's being a pussy, it could be because he's not competing at WrestleMania. And he then tells Sid that everyone knows that Sid isn't the real champion, and the title actually belongs to him. So Sid just hits Bret with a powerbomb, and then Bret gets escorted back. So whether that was done in the best sort of vibe for Bret Hart or not, I can't really say. You might know a little bit more about this interaction, Nick, maybe. But yeah, in terms of that, it just felt like Bret came out just to look a bit stupid and silly, and then he got sent back in. But we'll talk a little bit more about Bret later on, because the match would begin, and honestly, it was so boring. It was it was so dull. There were some moments here and there that made it a little better, and it seemed to have a little bit of back and forth, I suppose, at times. It was mostly dominated by Sid. He did a great job as a heel, and he, as the champion going into this one, he looked pretty assertive and pretty dominant, and that was good. But yeah, besides him looking pretty strong, unfortunately, he didn't do much, like, in terms of an entertaining stance and, a fun, in terms of making it like a fun, intriguing matchup. I felt like it didn't really hit that mark. And that's unfortunate, because, I think Vince or somebody on commentary mentioned, that it's not very often that Undertaker gets, dominated in this sort of manner in any match. And, Sid was doing that. So it was a testament to what he was achieving in the ring. And maybe that was, the idea, but I'm guessing they wanted to make it maybe hit a little harder, and it didn't quite do that for me, unfortunately. So it was really dragged out. It felt really dull, and yeah, I just wasn't interested in the general flow of the matchup. It just unfortunately didn't click for me. It gets to a point in the matchup where Undertaker, he goes for a tombstone power driver. Sid reverses it into one of his own, and he goes for a cover, and Undertaker kicks out at 2, so pretty close near full. The fight spills then to the outside of the ring, and that's where we see Bret Hart once again. This is a no disqualification match, by the way, so anything can happen, really. There's interference, weapons, whatever. We can do anything like that. So Bret turns up whilst the action's going on to the outside, and he hits Sid with a steel chair. He hits him a couple of times before he gets taken back to the back. But at this point, Sid is, he's not in a good way. He's been hurt. Undertaker rolls Sid back into the ring, hits a choke slam, which Sid does kick out of, and then Sid starts to take control, very quickly and briefly. But then Bret again shows up, and he, so Sid gets Bret up onto the apron. He's hitting him with some like beats to the chest sort of thing, like we see in modern day Sheamus, for example. And Bret is able to reverse it. He drops down, which in ways sort of brings Sid onto the top rope, sort of like bouncing him off of that top rope, and that leaves Undertaker perfect opportunity, hits a tombstone power driver to win the match. I thought the finish was pretty decent. Like that's what I will say. I thought the finish was nice. It was good. It was a good way of getting Undertaker his first WWF Championship as well. But I've got nothing against that. But just what led up until that point was so mind-numbingly dull and boring that it just was it was a bit of a shorter watch, I'm not going to lie. But yeah, you asked if there's a reason why Sid was only in 2 matches at WrestleMania. I mean, maybe. I'm not going to say yes or no, but maybe. I'm getting a little bit of a vibe from this. Out of the 2 matches that he had, both were pretty yikes. So Yeah, I don't know. I do feel for Undertaker at this point. You know, this is meant to be a big championship win for him, but it was a match that just didn't live up to any sort of hype that maybe it did generate. And yeah, it was tough. It was a tough watch. I gave it a 5.5 out of 10. Like I say, I liked the finish. I did. I thought that was good, but unfortunately, everything up until that point was just it was rough. Nick, how did you make of this main event? Was it as tough for you to watch, or can you find some light within the darkness?
Unfortunately, not. And I'm glad you hit that softball out of the park because, yeah, I think the common denominator here is Sid. I know it's easy to point Taker because look at Taker's 6 matches, of which you could argue 5 of them weren't very good, at least 4 of them. And unfortunately for me, this one gets put in that bucket of stinker matches that Taker has. Obviously, we know Taker is capable of good matches, but for whatever reason, he just keep getting put up against these giants, and 2 giants struggle to make a decent match, at least in this era. Um, and to me, this is kind of just what that was. Bret Hart coming down in the ring, probably because they knew that the match was going to be boring. I can't think of any other reason why he would be here. Obviously, he's very upset that Shawn Michaels is faking an injury as he claimed, and yeah, it just unfortunately, I think it's probably put in there to make the match seem a bit more interesting and have a bit more intrigue. But for me, honestly, it probably did the opposite of that. It had you just have the 2 guys have a clean match with no interference. I think it probably would have been better served. Probably would have helped us get more invested. But for how it was played out, I just wasn't invested. And as you mentioned, yeah, it was literally it was like, when's this match going to end? I think part of that too is that we just know the outcome, but I think another part of that is just that Sid has a look, but in terms of in ring capabilities, it's just not entertaining to watch. And so, unfortunately, that's kind of what I take away from this entire match is Sid isn't main event caliber, and honestly, to this point, if I was running WWE, I'm not sure Undertaker is either. At least that, or you're just putting him in with the wrong guys, which clearly, last year's match being that one exception, the rest not so great. For rating, I give this one a 4.5 out of 10, which is one of the lower main events I've given out. Yeah, just not it for me. And unfortunately, the kind of continuing, definitely, honestly, the low point of WrestleMania 13, because the rest of it, while not, groundbreaking or super high rated, with the one exception of the Austin Bret match, this one kind of just felt like it was a very dud way to end the evening, anticlimactic, if you will. But yeah, with that, let's go ahead and wrap this one up. WrestleMania 13 in the books. KP, want to go ahead and give us your overall rating and any last talking points you'd like to put out there, and we'll go ahead and finish this one out.
This is going to sound a bit odd, but in terms of my overall rating, this was a 6.5 out of 10 as an average of my matches put together. I think that is in some way carried by that of, Stone Cold Steve Austin and Bret the Hitman Hart, being obviously a perfect rating. It's technically my highest overall I've given to any WrestleMania so far. So I guess really WrestleMania 13 is the best WrestleMania in my opinion up until this point. However, what I will say is WrestleMania 12, they unfortunately had that one, quick match that just didn't do anything for me. But besides that, I thought I enjoyed that WrestleMania more than this one. So take that how you will. It's a little bit of an odd one, a little bit of a weird talking point. I'd love to hear, how this one weighs up in your estimations, comparatively speaking to that of 12 as well. But yeah, this one does work out as an average of my highest one so far. So it has one of my matches of all time in it, which is obviously, a tremendous thing. And generally speaking, the matches aside of that one were pretty, even around. Like, my ratings were 5, 6, 6, 5.5, 7, and then 5.5. So they are around all the same sort of area, which sort of is quite consistent, I guess. But yeah, just a dull main event. Not really the kind of last, impression you want on this WrestleMania. But it does include one of the matches of all time. So I guess, the pros and cons. And there was a crazy, chaotic, fun tag team match, which I quite enjoyed. So, bits here and there for sure. And Yeah, the crowd was really, really good. Like you said at the start of the of this video, I think they really helped certain situations. Like they were bringing it for certain matches, which was really good to see. And yeah, the 18,000 they were loud. So it's just Chicago. You expect it from these from these guys, right? Chicago always are good for bringing the noise. They sort of made it a lot more enjoyable in some parts, but obviously when there's certain matches like the main event, you can't really sort of build that up more than it could have been. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but yeah, 13 I thought was decent enough. Like I said, my highest average so far 6.5. Yeah, I think they're going in the right direction. Slowly they are creeping up in quality, these WrestleManias, so looking forward to seeing how the rest are going to be just as a general. So yeah, consider me interested, and I'm hopeful that these are going to keep going up in the right direction.
What's kind of crazy is that this match only had, or excuse me, this WrestleMania only had 7 matches, and last year's had 6, but obviously had that 60-minute Iron Man match, so it made sense it was a bit shorter. But again, yeah, continuing that trend of quality over quantity, I think is a great bout. There were those WrestleManias where we had 14 matches, and we know, knowing what we know today, that the WrestleManias do get longer eventually. But for now, they are definitely pulling that quality over quantity, which is it's a great option. Maybe that was out of necessity due to the thinning roster and competing WCW. But for now, I like that logic. So, yeah, the crowd did play a big part. Obviously, I think the biggest part they played was then the Bret and Stone Cold when they were brawling out in the outside in the crowd, and they were very much not being held back. So that made it for an interesting bit. I think unless we forget that the crowds used to do whatever they want. We remember, you probably recall the trash being thrown at the early manias. I think they finally put a stop to that. Thank goodness. But for this one, they were definitely having trouble containing the crowd, especially with Bret and Stone Cold being two of the biggest stars at the time, brawling in right next to them. Obviously, that's a big deal. And of course, the street fight, the crowd was pretty hyped for that one as well. But they definitely did make the moment, and I think definitely helped aid that perfect match in Austin and Bret Hart. I think without the crowd, maybe it's not as highly regarded. I'm sure it would be close, but good crowds definitely help. But yeah, with that, my rating is a 6.35, which is point 0.2 higher than 12, but kind of same tune you were singing. I would not put 13 over 12, just as a general, overall, but that's just kind of how the ratings work. And we go back and rate all the WrestleManias, I would definitely put 12 over 13. But obviously, 13 had a higher high in that of Austin and Bret Hart. The 12's high being Bret and Shawn. So that's kind of, I think, the big difference there. But the rest of the card, obviously being the low of 12 was Ultimate Warrior and Triple H, which was lower than the low of 13, which was Undertaker and Sid. So you can kind of see why the average played out that way. But just in general, I enjoyed 12 more than 13, but the 13 did have some quality matches, not super memorable, but some quality matches. And then obviously the high being that Bret and Austin match. So, with that, that is WrestleMania 13 in the books, and KP and I are feeling probably a bit fatigued at this point. We've hit about 3 of them every week leading up to this point, and 14 tomorrow will be the last of our busy work, if you will, where we're essentially what we've been doing is hitting 3 WrestleManias a week, and that has been, especially for those earlier ones, that was a bit of a chore, because a lot of those WrestleManias weren't very good. But it is picking up. 12 was good, 10 was good, and 13 is good as well. So it definitely picking up the pace here. But 14 we'll be back to do 14 tomorrow, and then we'll be down to 1 WrestleMania per week, and that is of course leading up to WrestleMania 42, where we'll do 1 per week. So finally caught up to how we wanted to lay that out. So looking forward to getting to that 1 WrestleMania per week. But with that, if you like anything that we put out here or disagree or just had to have a fun fact to add, that maybe we've missed, please let us know in the comments below. And of course, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, as that helps us out tremendously. But for now, this has been The Push with Nick and KP. And until next time, we'll see you soon. Take care.